You know that moment when you lock eyes with someone and something inside you just clicks. Your heart speeds up, and in seconds, you feel a strange connection, like you already know them, even if you've never met before. It feels magical, and I don't want to ruin that feeling, but it's not magic. It's your brain working fast, making decisions before you even realize it. Welcome to Neuro Academy. Tonight, we're here to understand why love can happen so fast, and why that speed can bring two people together, or leave them lost for years. Because falling in love quickly isn't just emotion, it's biology. Your brain is wired to make fast predictions, and sometimes those predictions feel like destiny. So let's ask, what signals make your brain say yes so quickly? Can you really trust that spark? And how do you know if it's true connection, or just a beautiful illusion? If you've ever felt that rush, the flutter in your chest, the pull towards someone new, you're not crazy, you're not alone, you're experiencing one of the oldest patterns in the human brain. And because I truly want this information to help you, I've prepared a guide with the key insights from tonight's video. You'll find it in the description, like a map you can return to whenever you need it. So take a breath and join us as we explore the hidden science of why we fall in love so fast. You are walking through a crowded street at dusk, the sky slowly dissolving into shades of violet and amber. Around you, hundreds of lives pass in fragments, shoes tapping the pavement, laughter spilling from a cafe, the rustle of someone carrying a bag of groceries. Each detail is just noise, background texture, until it happens. Your eyes meet another pair, and in that suspended instant, the world feels as if it has paused just for you. The air shifts, your chest tightens, and without permission, your mind whispers that something important has just occurred. It feels like recognition, like destiny disguised as coincidence. That first spark of attraction seems to bloom from nowhere, yet inside your brain, the moment is anything but empty. In less than a blink, whole networks of neurons fire in synchrony. Your senses gather fragments, the tilt of a smile, the cadence of footsteps, the warmth of skin in the fading light, and fuse them into a single impression. This impression does not wait for logic, it surges faster than conscious thought, leaving you with a powerful feeling before you even know why. Why is it that a glance can feel like a revelation? The answer begins with the way your brain is designed to make predictions. At every moment, your mind is running silent calculations, trying to decide whether what you encounter is safe, rewarding, or meaningful. These calculations happen not in minutes, but in fractions of a second. Falling in love quickly is not a failure of rationality. It is the result of an ancient system trained to respond with speed, because in evolution, speed often meant survival. Think of it this way. Long before humans carried phones or made deliberate choices about partners, your ancestors needed to recognize allies, threats, and potential mates in an environment full of uncertainty. The cost of hesitation could be danger. The reward of quick recognition could be life, safety, and reproduction. So the brain built shortcuts, fast routes of processing that bypass the slower corridors of reason. When your eyes meet someone who fits a hidden pattern, symmetry, expression, movement, those shortcuts light up like flares, telling you this person matters before you can ask why. Picture the moment as if your mind were a vast theatre. The spotlight sweeps across hundreds of faces in the crowd. For most, the light does not linger. They are shadows in the periphery. But then, for one, the beam stops, sharp and unwavering. That instant of focus is not magic, but choreography. In the folds of your brain, sensory signals rush toward the limbic system, where emotion is born, and then toward the reward circuits that hunger for novelty and connection. The feeling you call a spark is the body's way of saying, pay attention. This could change everything. And yet, there is something profoundly human in that urgency. To sense so quickly that someone could matter is not only about biology, it is about longing. Each person carries within them the silent hope of recognition, the desire that another might see them in a way the world does not. When your heart leaps at a glance, it is both neurons firing and an ancient story repeating, the story of being found. But let us return to the science, gently. Beneath the ribs of that experience lies the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep in your brain. It scans emotional relevance at lightning speed, deciding what deserves your attention. Alongside it, the ventral striatum, a hub of your reward system, releases the first drops of dopamine, painting the encounter with a hint of pleasure and urgency. Together, these circuits make rapid judgments, not with logic, but with feeling. They turn perception into conviction. They take someone in the crowd and transform them into someone unforgettable. Think of it as your brain rolling dice, weighted by memory, past experiences, your culture, childhood bonds, even fleeting encounters. Stack the probabilities, tilting the dice towards certain faces, certain gestures, certain energies. So when you feel that sudden spark, it is not destiny written from outside. It is a story woven from inside, shaped by everything you have carried until this moment. And still, it feels like magic because the process is invisible. Here is the paradox. The speed of that recognition feels eternal. You could swear you've known the person longer than a heartbeat. Philosophers have long wondered whether love at first sight is real or an illusion. Perhaps it is both. The illusion lies in the belief that this moment is absolute, untouched by psychology. The reality is that it is built on biology and memory, refined over millennia. But the truth of the feeling cannot be dismissed. For your nervous system, the spark is real. Neurons do not lie about their fire. Now pause. Reflect on a memory when you felt that sudden pull. Try to recall the exact instant, the light in their eyes, the cadence of their words, the way the world seemed to recede around them. Was it truly them, or was it also you, your projections, your longing, your secret pattern recognition, writing them into your story? This is where science touches philosophy. Love at first sight may be as much about the seer as the seen. And so the first spark becomes both a question and a promise. A question, why did your mind choose them and not another? A promise, if this signal is true, it could change the course of your life. That duality, uncertainty, wrapped in certainty, is what makes the moment so intoxicating. Your body cannot help but respond. Subtle changes unfold, your pupils widen, your breathing quickens, your skin warms, muscles in your face shift unconsciously toward a smile. You lean slightly forward, though you may not realize it. These micro movements signal openness, readiness, a silent invitation, and in those fractions of a second, the groundwork for connection is laid. But here is where the mystery deepens. If the spark comes so fast, can it be trusted? Are these neural shortcuts a faithful guide, or do they lead us into illusions? The answer lies in understanding how your brain builds those instant impressions, and why they sometimes deceive. And that is where we turn next. Imagine standing at the threshold of a busy cafe. You haven't even stepped inside yet, but already your mind is forming judgments about the people within. A flash of clothing color, the angle of a smile, the way someone leans across a table, each fragment registers in silence. And though you would insist you haven't decided anything yet, your brain is already making predictions. Who seems trustworthy? Who appears interesting? Who might hold your attention if your eyes met? These lightning-fast evaluations are the essence of what psychologists call instant impressions. They are the reason you can feel drawn to someone in less than a heartbeat. Your conscious thoughts may trail behind, but deep within, entire networks of neurons are calculating probabilities with astonishing efficiency. Think of it as a form of survival mathematics. For countless generations, humans had no luxury of hesitation. To hesitate could mean missing a friend, overlooking a foe, or losing a chance at reproduction. The brain evolved to work with fragments, not complete pictures. A glance at a stranger's expression could decide whether to approach or retreat. Those who calculated quickly often lived longer, and they passed on this bias for speed. Inside your head, The process resembles a kind of hidden algorithm. The visual system delivers patterns to the brain's evaluative centers, shapes of eyes, subtleties of posture, the brightness of skin tone under ambient light. Almost instantly, the amygdala and orbitofrontal cortex weigh these signals against your personal archive of memory. Without you realizing, they ask, does this face resemble people I've trusted? Does this expression signal warmth or threat? Do I recognize vitality, youth, or signs of health? Each question is answered not in words, but in microscopic pulses of electricity. Imagine a conductor raising a baton over a symphony. At the downbeat, dozens of instruments respond at once. The sound is not one note, but many, woven together into something greater. Your instant impression works the same way. Visual cues, vocal tones, even subtle movements are orchestrated into a sensation, attraction, interest, comfort, or avoidance. And like music, you feel it before you can explain it. But here is the curious part. These impressions are often right and wrong. They are right in that they allow you to pick up on authentic signals of emotion. Research has shown that people can detect genuine smiles versus forced ones within a fraction of a second. Your nervous system notices the difference in muscle movement around the eyes, the so-called Duchenne marker, even if you never consciously articulate it. Yet these impressions can also deceive. Biases slip into the process. A tilt of the jaw may remind you of someone you once loved, and so you transfer warmth where none has been earned. A style of clothing may echo your cultural ideals of desirability, creating a sense of connection that is more projection than perception. Your brain fills in gaps with expectation. In love, these expectations often shine brighter than the truth. Pause for a moment and picture your mind as a painter in haste. Instead of sketching every detail, it splashes broad strokes onto the canvas, leaving you with an image that feels whole but is not complete. That is the nature of first impressions. They are paintings of speed, not accuracy, and sometimes that painting can be so beautiful you mistake it for reality. Why does this matter for love? Because when you say you fell in love at first sight, what you often mean is that your brain assembled a story about someone in seconds. That story might hold kernels of truth. You sensed warmth in their eyes, humor in their posture, vitality in their movements. But the rest is scaffolding, assumptions, projections, and hope layered over fragments. Still, the experience is undeniable. Instant impressions feel like knowledge, not guesses. And that conviction is precisely what makes them powerful. In fact, studies suggest that people often trust their snap judgments about attractiveness or trustworthiness more than deliberate analysis. The body surges with confidence in its own speed. There is a philosophical weight to this as well. If our minds are so quick to decide, what does that say about freedom? Do we truly choose whom we fall for? Or are we simply witnesses to decisions our brain has already made? The paradox of love lies in this. The same rapid judgments that help us survive also give us the sensation of destiny. What was once an evolutionary shortcut now feels like fate written in a glance. And perhaps that is why these moments matter so deeply. A single second can alter the trajectory of years. You walk into a room, eyes lock with another, and in that fragile interval, your mind has already begun to build a story. Long before conversation, long before knowledge, the foundation is laid. But here is the cliffhanger. If these impressions are built on speed, what exactly are they using as raw material? What cues, subtle and invisible, does your brain seize upon to decide that this person, out of all the others, might be the one to matter? The answer lies in the hidden art of thin slicing. Picture a camera shutter snapping open for the briefest instant, capturing a single frame of life before closing again. That one frame, frozen in less than a fraction of a second, can reveal far more than you expect. The lift of a brow, the softness of a smile, the angle of a body leaning forward or away. These small fragments gathered and judged in a blink are what scientists call thin slices of behavior. and astonishingly, your brain uses them to make sweeping judgments about another human being. The idea is simple yet profound. You don't need hours of interaction to sense who someone is. Sometimes the first few seconds, what you might dismiss as insignificant, are enough to trigger lasting impressions. A tilt of the head can signal openness. A fleeting hesitation in voice can whisper uncertainty. A micro-expression flashing across the face can hint at hidden emotion. Though each detail lasts only an instant, your mind binds them into a larger pattern, a story about who this person might be. Neuroscience suggests that this rapid processing happens because your perceptual systems are tuned to efficiency. Vision funnels data to the fusiform face area, which specializes in decoding human expressions with incredible speed. Meanwhile, the amygdala quietly evaluates whether those expressions align with safety, threat, or potential reward. These structures don't wait for full sentences or long interactions. They rely on fragments, filling in gaps before you are even aware that a judgment has been made. Imagine your mind as a skilled detective, standing in a dark room, with only flashes of light. Each flash illuminates a fragment, a hand gesture here, a glance there. The detective does not complain about missing pieces. Instead, it constructs a coherent story from what is available. Thin slicing is your brain's detective work, assembling a portrait of another human from the briefest glimpses. And research shows just how powerful this process can be. In controlled studies, participants were asked to watch only a few seconds of silent video clips of teachers, judges, or strangers meeting for the first time. Incredibly, their snap judgments about warmth, competence, or trustworthiness often matched the evaluations made by people who had known those individuals far longer. The human mind, it seems, is an expert at reading the essential tone of others from minimal information. But here lies the danger. The same system that grants you intuitive accuracy can also mislead. Thin slices are efficient, not infallible. They draw heavily on your personal history, your cultural expectations, and your unconscious biases. A fleeting detail that reminds you of someone beloved can make you overestimate kindness. A subtle cue that recalls a past betrayal can make you misjudge someone as untrustworthy. Your brain fills in missing pieces with assumptions, and those assumptions are not always kind. Still, the allure of thin slicing in love is undeniable. When you feel an electric pull towards someone after only a glance, what you are really experiencing is your brain's confidence in its micro-analysis. The tiny flickers of behavior have aligned with patterns your nervous system interprets as meaningful. It feels like recognition, because in a way it is. You are not seeing only them, you are also seeing the echo of every pattern your brain has catalogued over a lifetime. Reflect on this for a moment. How many times have you felt you just knew someone the instant you met them? Perhaps you sensed warmth in their voice, kindness in their eyes, or a shared rhythm in how they carried themselves. That certainty did not arise from nowhere. It was the rapid work of your perceptual detective, piecing together a portrait in the blink of an eye. And yet that portrait may have been more about your own archives of memory than the truth of who they are. Philosophically, this raises a haunting question. When you fall for someone at first sight, are you falling in love with them, or with the story your brain paints from thin slices? Is it truly recognition of another soul, or the projection of your own longing onto fragments of expression? The answer may be both, an intertwining of reality and illusion, biology and hope. And so thin slicing is both gift and gamble. A gift because it allows us to connect swiftly, to feel that magnetic spark that can turn a stranger into someone unforgettable. A gamble because the very speed that enchants us may blind us to deeper truths hidden beyond the surface. Still, the brain rarely stops to question. Once the impression is formed, dopamine begins to flow, rewarding the sense of recognition, amplifying the attraction, encouraging you to lean closer. What began as a fragment becomes conviction. What was once a guess now feels like destiny. But thin slicing is only the beginning. To understand why love can ignite so fast, we must look deeper into the machinery of the mind. Beyond the fragments and the shortcuts lies the reason itself, the brain's relentless drive to save energy, to choose speed over caution. And that is where the story carries us next. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine your brain as a vast city at night. Billions of lights flicker across its skyline, some blazing brightly, others dimmed to conserve power. At any given second, this city must decide how to allocate its energy. Which neighborhoods should stay illuminated? Which roads should remain open? Which pathways can be dimmed to save precious fuel? This is what your brain does with every thought, every perception, every decision. It is a master of efficiency. Though it consumes only a small fraction of your body's mass, it devours a disproportionately large share of your energy. To survive, it cannot afford to waste resources. It must work quickly, choosing shortcuts whenever possible. And in the realm of love, this economy of effort shapes the speed at which you fall. Think of it as a kind of cognitive triage. Each new face, each new encounter is placed into one of two lines. The first line is the fast track, where quick judgments are made using patterns you've already learned. The second line is the slow track, where deeper analysis takes time, comparing details, weighing alternatives, reasoning through possibilities. For survival, the brain prefers the fast track. It relies on heuristics, mental shortcuts, that provide good enough answers in milliseconds. This is why, in a crowded room, one person may suddenly stand out as magnetic. Your brain doesn't carefully analyze every feature of every individual. That would be too costly, too slow. Instead, it uses shortcuts, symmetry in the face as a marker of health, warmth in the eyes as a signal of trust, vitality in movement as a clue of strength. These cues are processed automatically, allowing you to decide in less time than it takes to blink. Consider the orbit of frontal cortex, a region just behind your forehead. It is like the city planner of your mind, integrating sensory inputs and prioritizing what deserves your attention. When you encounter someone new, it quickly combines visual, auditory, and even olfactory signals to form a judgment. If the result aligns with what your memory marks as valuable, safety, beauty, familiarity, the system delivers a powerful sense of attraction. The process is so fast you experience it not as analysis, but as intuition. A metaphor may help. Imagine you are a traveler arriving at a foreign train station, overwhelmed by noise and motion. Signs are written in a language you barely understand, yet somehow within moments you recognize which platform to head toward. How? You don't consciously read every word. You rely on familiar shapes, the flow of the crowd, the rhythm of announcements. Your brain applies shortcuts, and they usually work well enough to guide you. Love works in much the same way, an overload of sensory data, quickly compressed into a direction, a choice, a spark. But efficiency carries risk. Just as a city that cuts too many lights may overlook danger in a darkened alley, your brain's shortcuts can mislead. They privilege speed over precision, sometimes turning fragments into full stories that do not exist. A fleeting resemblance to someone you once trusted may convince you of kindness. A tone of voice echoing a childhood memory may flood you with warmth. The shortcut feels like truth, even when it is not. Philosophically, this brings us to a strange realization. Much of what we call love at first sight is not deliberation, but conservation. Your mind is trying to save energy, to move swiftly from chaos to clarity. It trades the richness of careful knowing for the urgency of quick believing, and in that trade it gifts you with intensity. For better or worse, that intensity is what makes the experience unforgettable. Still, there is beauty in this economy. Imagine if every encounter required endless scrutiny, every decision a laborious weighing of possibilities. You would drown in indecision, paralyzed by detail. Instead, your brain's shortcuts allow you to move, to feel, to risk. They make it possible for a single glance to alter your life, for speed to masquerade as certainty, Without them, the magic of sudden love might never exist. Now pause to reflect. Think of a time you felt immediate attraction to someone. Did you ever wonder why it was so fast? Perhaps you dismissed it as irrational. Yet what if it was not irrational at all, but a function of your mind's deep architecture? What if your brain was not failing, but conserving, choosing intensity over delay, because that is what evolution designed it to do? And here lies the cliffhanger. If the brain is so eager to leap using shortcuts, what cues does it rely on most? Out of all the possible signals, faces, eyes, voices, scents, which ones speak loudest in those first fractions of a second? To answer that, we must look at the body's silent messengers, the signs of attraction etched into the face, the gaze, the body itself. You find yourself in a gallery filled with portraits. Some faces draw you in immediately, as if their features are arranged in a harmony your eyes can't resist. Others pass by without much impression. What gives one face the power to hold your gaze? The answer is hidden in the language of symmetry and subtle signals, cues, that your brain reads in an instant, long before you form a conscious thought. Scientists have long studied this phenomenon. In one well-known experiment, researchers digitally averaged photographs of multiple faces, creating a composite image. Participants consistently rated these blended faces as more attractive than the originals. Why? Because the averaging process smoothed out irregularities, producing greater symmetry. The human brain, it turns out, has a quiet preference for balance. Symmetry may signal health, stability, and genetic fitness, qualities that, across evolutionary time, increase the chance of survival and reproduction. Your visual system is exquisitely sensitive to these patterns. The fusiform gyrus, located in the temporal lobe, specializes in recognizing faces. Within milliseconds, it decodes proportions, the spacing of the eyes, the curve of the jawline, the balance between left and right. When symmetry is high, this region lights up, feeding positive signals into your reward system. The response is so fast that you experience it not as analysis, but as an almost magnetic pull. But science tells only part of the story. Philosophically, symmetry resonates because it reflects something deeper, the human longing for order. In a world filled with chaos, to see balance in another's face is to glimpse a pattern that feels safe, familiar, almost eternal. Perhaps this is why poets have compared beauty to geometry, and why we often equate harmony in appearance with harmony in spirit. Yet symmetry alone cannot explain the mystery of attraction. Another experiment revealed that people often prefer faces that are not perfectly symmetrical, but that carry distinctive, unique features. Too much balance can feel uncanny, artificial, lacking the spark of individuality. This tension reflects a paradox in love. We crave both stability and surprise, both order and uniqueness. Your brain is wired to value symmetry, but your heart is drawn to the slight irregularities that make someone singular. Now imagine standing before someone whose face balances these forces, a symmetrical structure touched by individuality. Your brain floods with signals of attraction, but your mind weaves a story around it. This person feels right. This person feels familiar. In truth, it is not destiny speaking, but circuits of perception honed over millennia, and yet the feeling is no less powerful for being biological. Cultural layers add another twist. Studies show that ideals of beauty vary across societies and eras. In some times, fuller features signaled health and abundance. In others, slender forms were prized. The science of symmetry may be universal, but its expression is filtered through culture, history, and personal experience. This is why a face that captivates you may leave another person unmoved. Attraction is universal and particular, shaped by both evolution and story. Pause here. Think of a face that once struck you deeply. Was it the balance of features or the spark of uniqueness? Was it the echo of health or the shadow of memory, reminding you of someone long gone? The science of symmetry cannot capture that whole truth, because love does not unfold only in the laboratory. It unfolds in your inner world where data and longing meet. Still, experiments give us clarity. They show that your brain does not wander randomly in attraction. It follows patterns, preferences for balance, subtle markers of vitality, signals of genetic fitness. These signals are ancient whispers of biology, nudging you toward choices that once increased survival. But in the present, they take on another meaning. They become the sparks of desire, the foundation for stories of love. And here lies the cliffhanger. If symmetry and facial cues speak so loudly, what about the eyes, the windows so often described as the soul? They do more than reflect beauty. They carry signals of attention, emotion, even chemistry, all in a single glance. And it is to the eyes, those silent messengers, that we now turn. Imagine being caught in someone's gaze across a room. The air seems to thicken, the background blurs, and though no words are spoken, you feel as if an invisible thread has been pulled taut between you. Eyes have long been called windows to the soul, but in truth they are also windows into hidden biology, silent messengers of attraction and intent that your brain interprets faster than thought. Scientists have studied this phenomenon in careful detail. In one classic experiment, researchers manipulated the size of pupils in photographs without participants realizing it. When shown faces with larger pupils, people consistently rated them as more attractive and more emotionally engaging. Pupil dilation, though outside conscious control, signals arousal and interest. Your brain reads it instinctively, as if the widening eyes were a secret language saying, "I am open to you." Eye contact itself carries powerful effects. In the 1970s, psychologist Zick Rubin conducted a study measuring how much time couples spent gazing into each other's eyes. Those who were deeply in love maintained eye contact about 75% of the time during conversation, far higher than casual acquaintances. The conclusion was clear. Extended gaze is not just a symptom of love, but also a fuel for it. When your eyes lock with another's, your brain's reward system releases dopamine, deepening the sense of connection. And there is more. Mutual gaze has been shown to trigger activity in the hypothalamus and limbic regions, areas that regulate emotion, bonding, and even hormonal responses. One experiment found that sustained eye contact between strangers increased feelings of closeness and intimacy, even without words. The eyes do not only perceive, they also broadcast signals that reshape how two nervous systems align. But science alone cannot capture the gravity of a glance. Philosophically, to be seen is to exist in a new way. When someone's eyes hold yours, it feels as though they confirm your being, reflecting you back with intensity. This is why lovers describe getting lost in each other's eyes. It is not simply about light and pupil size, but about the profound relief of recognition. In their gaze, you are not invisible. You are chosen. Think of the eye as both mirror and beacon. As a mirror, it reflects the subtle emotions flickering through the mind: joy, fear, desire, hesitation. As a beacon, it projects signals outward, shaping how others respond. In the delicate dance of attraction, eyes are like spotlights, guiding each step, intensifying or softening the rhythm of approach. Yet eye contact is not always comfort. A gaze can intimidate, overwhelm, or expose too much. Across cultures, direct eye contact sometimes signals respect, other times aggression. This duality reminds us that the eyes are not only instruments of connection, but also of power. To hold or avoid a gaze is to navigate the fragile line between intimacy and intrusion. Pause here and reflect. Recall a time when someone's eyes lingered on you. Did you feel curiosity, safety, desire, or did you feel the urge to turn away? That reaction was not only emotional, it was physiological. Your amygdala had already assessed the gaze. Your heart rate had adjusted. Your body had decided whether to lean closer or retreat. What feels like intuition is once again rapid computation. And yet, for all the data, the experience retains its mystery. Lovers across centuries have written of eyes as portals, as oceans, as infinite skies. The metaphors endure because the science, though illuminating, cannot strip away the wonder. The glance remains both biology and poetry, neurons firing and souls touching. But here lies the next layer of intrigue. If the eyes signal so much, what happens when the voice enters the equation? Beyond the gaze, attraction often blooms in the resonance of sound, the cadence, the rhythm, the tone that vibrates through the air and into your nervous system. And it is to the hidden power of voices that we now turn. Close your eyes and imagine a voice speaking your name, not the words themselves, but the timbre, the resonance, the way it rolls through the air and settles inside your chest. Even without seeing the speaker, you sense something: warmth, authority, tenderness, or danger. A voice is never just sound. It is vibration carrying hidden codes, weaving itself into your nervous system. Science has shown that we are finely tuned to these signals. In one study, participants listened to recordings of strangers reading neutral sentences. When asked to rate attractiveness, listeners consistently preferred voices with certain qualities. In men, slightly lower pitch and rich resonance. In women, softer tones and melodic variation. These preferences are not random, they are echoes of evolutionary pressures. A deeper male voice may signal maturity and strength, while a higher female voice can suggest youth and fertility. Though we rarely articulate this consciously, our brains interpret it within milliseconds. The auditory system processes these cues with astonishing speed. Sound waves enter the ear, vibrating the cochlea, and within fractions of a second, signals are sent to the auditory cortex. From there, the information spreads into emotional centers, like the amygdala, attaching meaning to tone before words are even understood. This is why you can detect sarcasm, affection, or anger almost instantly, even in an unfamiliar language. The body hears the feeling before it hears the message. But there is another layer. Voices don't just carry information. They create resonance between people. When two individuals are drawn to each other, studies show their speech rhythms often fall into synchrony. The pace of words, the pauses, even the subtle rises and falls begin to mirror. This vocal alignment fosters a sense of harmony, a bodily confirmation that we are in tune. Think of a conversation as music. Each voice is an instrument, and attraction emerges when the instruments begin to play in key. A laugh at the same time, a shared rhythm of sighs or breaths, the echo of tone, all of these create an unconscious duet. Your nervous system registers this harmony as intimacy, rewarding you with a sense of connection that feels deeper than words. Philosophically, the voice carries something beyond biology. It is the only part of your body that exists both inside and outside at once. Born from the breath within, shaped by the folds of the vocal cords, and released into the world, it is a bridge between your inner life and another's perception. To hear someone's voice is to hear a piece of their unseen self vibrating in your very air. This is why a familiar voice can comfort across distance, and why a stranger's voice can spark fascination or unease. Yet, voices can deceive. Just as with faces, your preferences may be colored by memory. A tone resembling that of a loved one can create instant fondness. A cadence echoing a painful figure from your past can provoke distrust. These biases work silently, guiding your reactions before you know why. Love at first sound is as real as love at first sight, and just as vulnerable to illusion. Pause here. Recall a voice that once captivated you. Perhaps it wasn't the words, but the way they were said, the warmth that wrapped around your name, the rhythm that made you lean closer. Did it feel as if the voice carried not just sound, but intent, intimacy, invitation? That impression was partly biological, partly poetic. It was your brain responding to vibration, and your soul responding to meaning. Experiments confirm that vocal attraction is powerful. In one study, participants who spent only minutes talking on the phone reported a surprising sense of closeness, even without visual contact. The voice alone was enough to create intimacy, to paint a portrait of another human in the mind. Sound became substance. Vibration became connection. And yet the voice does not act alone. Beyond what we see and hear, there is another messenger that shapes instant attraction. Scent. Subtle, invisible, often unrecognized. Smell can draw two people together with a force as real as sight or sound. And so the story now turns to the chemistry carried on the air, the hidden science of scent and memory. Imagine passing someone in a hallway. You barely register their face, perhaps only a quick impression, but a trace of scent lingers in the air. Warm skin, faint cologne, or something subtler you can't name. Strangely, the impression stays with you. Hours later, you remember not the hallway itself, but the way the air felt as you moved through it. Smell, more than any other sense, reaches directly into memory and emotion, shaping attraction before you realize it. Science explains why. Unlike vision or hearing, the pathways of smell bypass the brain's relay station, the thalamus. Odor molecules travel from the nose straight to the olfactory bulb, which connects directly to the amygdala and hippocampus, centers of emotion and memory. This means that scent has privileged access. It can stir feelings and recall memories instantly, without waiting for rational thought. That is why a single whiff of perfume can collapse time, transporting you to childhood, to a lost love, to a forgotten moment. In attraction, scent operates like a secret code. One of the most studied elements is the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC, a set of genes that regulate immune system function. Research has shown that people often prefer the natural body odor of potential partners whose MHC genes differ from their own. The reason is biological. Such pairings can lead to offspring with stronger immune systems. Participants in experiments, when asked to smell worn t-shirts, consistently rated the scent of genetically compatible strangers as more pleasant, even without knowing why. This invisible chemistry influences more than preference. It can shape bonding itself. Mothers recognize their newborns by smell within hours of birth, and infants orient toward their mother's scent for comfort. Lovers, too, may unconsciously imprint on each other's natural odors, associating them with safety, arousal, or longing. A sweater left behind can evoke presence more powerfully than a photograph. Philosophically, scent carries a paradox. It is invisible, intangible, yet profoundly real. You cannot hold it in your hand, yet it can hold you captive in memory. To fall in love with someone's scent is to acknowledge the unseen forces that govern desire. Perhaps this is why poets describe lovers' fragrances as haunting, as if smell itself were a ghost of the soul. Experiments confirm just how primal this influence can be. In one study, women rated men's scents differently depending on where they were in their menstrual cycle, suggesting that hormonal shifts alter perception of attractiveness. Another study found that couples who reported strong mutual attraction also reported higher liking for each other's natural body odor. Though these results may seem unromantic, they reveal a deeper truth. Biology and chemistry weave threads into the fabric of what we call love. Pause for a moment. Think of a time when someone's scent stayed with you, a trace on clothing, a pillow, the air after they left. Did it feel like a presence? Did it carry comfort or longing or even ache? That response was not imagined. It was your limbic system at work, binding smell to memory, memory to emotion, emotion to attachment. And here lies the subtle wonder. Even as sight and sound enchant us, scent works quietly beneath awareness, anchoring love in the deepest layers of the brain. When you fall fast, it is not just the sparkle of eyes or the cadence of a voice. It may also be the chemistry carried on the air, invisible and undeniable. But this raises a new question. If sight, sound, and scent all converge to spark attraction, what happens inside the brain when these signals are combined? What system translates them into the thrill of novelty, into the rush that feels like falling? The answer lies in the circuitry of reward, the dance of dopamine, lighting up the mind when love begins too quickly to resist. Picture the first rush of encountering someone new. The pulse in your chest quickens, your attention narrows, and a strange sense of brightness fills the world. You might describe it as butterflies, a spark, or the sensation of falling. But beneath the poetry lies chemistry, an orchestra of neurotransmitters flooding your brain, with dopamine leading as the conductor. Dopamine is often called the brain's pleasure chemical, but in truth it is less about pleasure itself, and more about anticipation and novelty. It fires not simply when you receive something rewarding, but when you expect it, when the future holds promise. This is why falling in love so quickly can feel intoxicating. The presence of someone new triggers a surge of dopamine that paints every moment with heightened significance. In one famous experiment, neuroscientist Helen Fisher and her team placed people deeply in love inside an fMRI scanner. When shown pictures of their beloved, participants' brains lit up in regions rich in dopamine receptors, particularly the ventral tegmental area and the caudate nucleus. These are the same circuits activated by addictive substances and thrilling experiences. The results revealed what lovers already knew. To be in love is to be caught in a neurological storm of craving and reward. The novelty factor is crucial. Dopamine thrives on the unexpected. A new face, a new voice, an unexplored possibility. These ignite the system more powerfully than the familiar. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. Seeking novelty encouraged exploration, discovery of resources, and potential mates beyond the immediate circle. Your ancestors survived by being drawn to the new, and you inherit that bias in the thrill of a glance that feels electric. Imagine your brain as a lantern in the dark. Routine keeps the flame steady, but novelty pours oil on the fire, making it blaze brighter. When you meet someone who sparks attraction, your dopamine system floods the moment with light, exaggerating colors, sharpening sounds, amplifying the sense that this person is extraordinary. The feeling of destiny is, in part, a trick of neurochemistry, your brain rewarding you for paying attention to novelty. Yet this chemical surge comes with a philosophical weight. If dopamine magnifies the new, does that mean love at first sight is less about recognition and more about reward? Are we falling for the person or for the feeling our own brains create? Perhaps both. The beloved becomes the canvas, but dopamine paints the picture, flooding the ordinary with a glow of the extraordinary. Experiments confirm how powerful this system is. In studies where participants engaged in risk-taking games, dopamine release spiked when outcomes were uncertain, even if the reward was small. The parallel with love is striking. The uncertainty of whether someone might return your interest intensifies desire. The very not knowing becomes fuel for the chemical fire. Pause for a moment and reflect. Think of a time when you felt drawn instantly to someone. Was it their beauty, their charm, or was it also the sheer newness of them, the mystery of what they represented? That mystery itself was part of the pull as your brain translated uncertainty into exhilaration. But here lies the paradox. While dopamine drives the thrill of beginnings, it is unstable. The surge fades as novelty becomes familiarity. This is why the first spark of love feels so different from the steady warmth of long-term attachment. One is a blaze, the other a hearth. Both are necessary, but they live in different regions of the mind. And so we arrive at a deeper question. If dopamine fuels the speed of falling, what else sustains the illusion of unity in those early moments? The answer lies in something even more profound, the synchrony of bodies, the hidden choreography where breath, heartbeat, and rhythm begin to align. Imagine sitting across from someone in conversation. You lean in as they speak, nodding slightly, and without realizing it, your breathing slows to match theirs. Your bodies adjust in tiny increments, hearts finding a rhythm that begins to echo. This synchrony is subtle, often unnoticed, but it is one of the most powerful forces drawing two people together. Science has uncovered remarkable evidence for this phenomenon. In one experiment, pairs of participants, some romantic couples, Some strangers were asked to sit quietly facing each other. Researchers measured heart rates and breathing patterns. The results showed that couples in love displayed striking synchrony with their physiological rhythms, aligning far more closely than those of strangers. But even between strangers, moments of shared focus or attraction led to measurable convergence. The body, it seems, resonates in harmony when it senses connection. How does this happen? The autonomic nervous system plays a role. It governs involuntary processes like heart rate and respiration, and it is highly sensitive to emotional cues. When you are drawn to someone, your attention narrows, your mirror neuron system engages, and your body begins to unconsciously imitate their rhythms. This creates a feedback loop. Alignment feels good, the brain rewards it, and attraction deepens. Think of it like two instruments tuning to each other. At first, the notes may clash, but with subtle adjustments, the tones converge until harmony emerges. In human interaction, this harmony is not just metaphorical. It is measurable in breath, heartbeat, and even brainwave patterns. Studies using EEG scans have shown that when people engage deeply with one another, their neural oscillations begin to synchronize as if two minds were briefly sharing the same rhythm. Philosophically, this synchrony touches on something profound. To fall in love is not only to meet another mind, but to feel your own body resonate with theirs, as if existence itself were less solitary. In those moments, you do not merely think we are connected, you embody it. Your lungs and heart, without your command, play the same music. Experiments extend this insight further. In a famous study by psychologist Arthur Aaron, pairs of strangers were guided through a series of intimate questions and then asked to gaze into each other's eyes for 4 minutes. Many reported intense feelings of closeness, and some even began relationships afterward. Part of the reason lies in synchrony. Shared vulnerability and sustained gaze create conditions where bodies align, amplifying the sense of intimacy. Pause here and reflect. Can you recall a time when your laughter matched someone else's so perfectly it felt like a duet, or when your steps fell into rhythm as you walked together without planning it? These moments feel small, but they carry the weight of recognition. They whisper we are moving together, and that whisper shapes how quickly love can grow. But synchrony can also mislead. Just as a song can temporarily harmonize two instruments that later fall apart, bodily alignment can create the illusion of deeper compatibility than truly exists. This is why fleeting encounters, a dance, a shared joke, a moment of silence, can feel disproportionately powerful. The body registers resonance and mistakes it for permanence. Yet even if the illusion fades, the truth remains. Your nervous system is tuned for connection. It seeks harmony, and when it finds it, even briefly, the reward feels like love. And this leads us to the next question. Beyond body rhythms and physical signals, how does the brain itself mirror another's state? The answer lies in a remarkable system of cells, mirror neurons that allow you to feel what another feels, making love not only rapid but deeply contagious. Picture yourself watching someone you care about reach for a glass of water. Without thinking, your own hand twitches ever so slightly, as if mirroring the movement. Or imagine you see a person stub their toe. You wince, your body cringes, though the pain is not yours. These small automatic echoes are the work of a special class of brain cells known as mirror neurons. Discovered in the 1990s by neuroscientists in Parma, Italy, mirror neurons were first observed in macaque monkeys. Researchers noticed that certain neurons in the premotor cortex fired not only when the monkey performed an action, like grasping a peanut, but also when it watched another monkey, or even a human, do the same. The brain, it seemed, blurred the line between self and other. What you see, you partially become. In humans, the evidence is even richer. Brain imaging studies show that when you watch someone smile, your motor cortex activates the same muscles as if preparing to smile yourself. When you see someone cry, your limbic system, the seat of emotion, lights up in resonance. Attraction, then, is not just recognition, it is imitation. Your brain rehearses the other's state, pulling you into their emotional world before you have time to resist. This mirroring creates a profound sense of connection. When you first fall for someone, you don't just notice their expressions, you subtly copy them. Your posture leans the way theirs leans. Your speech adopts their rhythm. Your laughter matches their tone. This unconscious mimicry is not superficial. It is bonding in action. The more in sync your behaviors become, the more your nervous systems reinforce each other, amplifying feelings of closeness. Philosophically, mirror neurons suggest that love is not solely within you or me, but in the space between us. They reveal that to know another is, in some sense, to become them. When your brain fires as theirs does, the boundary between self and other softens. This may be why early love feels like merging, as if two lives briefly overlap in one shared current. Experiments confirm this blending. In one study, participants asked to mimic their partner's gestures reported stronger feelings of connection and empathy. Another showed that couples in love often display automatic synchronization of micro-expressions, tiny, fleeting movements that last less than half a second. These subtle reflections increase trust, signaling to each brain that we are aligned. But mirroring is not infallible. It can trick you into perceiving intimacy where little exists. A skilled conversationalist who mirrors your body language may feel instantly likable, even if their intentions are shallow. Your brain rewards synchrony with dopamine, making alignment feel like authenticity. The danger is mistaking imitation for genuine resonance. Pause and reflect. Think of a moment when you caught yourself smiling simply because someone else smiled. Did the warmth you felt belong to them, or to the echo inside your own nervous system? This is the hidden power of mirror neurons. They make emotion contagious, so that love, once sparked, spreads like fire across two brains. And yet, even as mirroring fuels closeness, another system waits beneath, one that deepens the bond beyond the thrill of imitation. It is not just about neurons firing in parallel, but about chemicals flowing through the bloodstream, building trust and attachment. These chemicals, oxytocin and vasopressin, act like the glue that transforms fleeting sparks into bonds. And it is to this chemistry of attachment, the hidden foundation of why quick love can feel unbreakable, that we now turn. Imagine the warmth of a hug, not just the physical closeness, but the way your body seems to exhale, tension softening as if safety has arrived. In that moment, something subtle but powerful happens inside you. The release of oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. This small molecule plays an outsized role in why love can feel immediate, intense, and sometimes unshakable. Oxytocin is produced in the hypothalamus and released both into the bloodstream and directly into the brain. Its effects ripple across systems, reducing stress responses, increasing feelings of trust, and heightening social connection. In experiment, participants who inhaled oxytocin through a nasal spray were more likely to trust strangers with money in economic games compared to those given a placebo. The chemical did not make them naive. It amplified the brain's bias towards seeing others as safe and worthy of cooperation. In love, oxytocin is released through touch, holding hands, embracing, even eye contact, and gentle voice tones. This is why early moments of closeness can feel disproportionately powerful. A simple brush of the hand may trigger chemistry that magnifies the sense of intimacy, convincing your body that this person is safe and significant. Alongside oxytocin is vasopressin, another hormone linked to social bonding, particularly in pair bonding behaviors observed in animals. In studies of prairie voles, small mammals known for their lifelong monogamy, blocking vasopressin receptors disrupted pair bonds, while enhancing them reinforced attachment. Although humans are more complex, similar mechanisms appear to operate, shaping loyalty and the desire to remain close once a connection forms. Philosophically, these findings raise profound questions. If trust and attachment can be influenced by molecules, What does that mean for free will in love? Are we choosing devotion, or are our bodies choosing it for us? Perhaps the answer lies in recognizing that love is not diminished by biology, it is enriched by it. Chemistry provides the soil, but the story you write upon it is still your own. Experiments illuminate how oxytocin interacts with perception. In one study, couples given oxytocin rated their partners as more attractive compared to control groups, even when shown the same photographs. The hormone seemed to filter vision itself, heightening the glow of familiarity. This explains why, in the flush of early love, the beloved seems luminous, almost set apart from the rest of the world. Pause here and reflect. Think of a time when closeness with someone felt like sanctuary, when their presence alone quieted your restlessness. Was it only affection, or was it also the silent chemistry of oxytocin, shaping trust at the level of molecules, the body and the soul, entwined in a dialogue neither can complete alone? But while oxytocin fosters connection, it also carries risk. It increases trust, but not always wisely. Experiments show that it can intensify in-group bias, making people more loyal to those they identify with, but also more dismissive of outsiders. In love, this can mean devotion to a partner, even when logic might suggest caution. The very chemistry that builds bonds can also blind. And so, oxytocin and vasopressin explain why love can feel so immediate, so binding. They are the invisible threads pulling two nervous systems into alignment. But chemistry is not the whole story, for in the heart of quick love lies not only trust and bonding, but also illusion, the tendency of the mind to project what it longs for onto the beloved. And that brings us to the next chapter, the illusions of affinity, the tricks of the mind that make love at first sight feel deeper than it truly is. Imagine meeting someone for the first time, and within minutes you feel as if you've known them forever. Their laugh feels familiar, their gestures strangely comforting, their stories echoing pieces of your own. You tell yourself, this is rare, this is destiny. But in truth, much of that sensation may be illusion, your mind projecting its own patterns onto the other, weaving similarity where only fragments exist. Psychologists call this projection. It is the brain's tendency to fill in gaps about others with traits we carry within ourselves. When you meet someone who triggers warmth or attraction, your mind begins painting them with the colors of your own desires, expectations, and memories. That is why love at first sight often feels less like discovery and more like recognition. You are, in a way, recognizing yourself. Experiments show how quickly this illusion can take root. In studies of perceived similarity, people rated new acquaintances as more like themselves when they felt an immediate spark. The catch: objective measures showed no real similarity in values or preferences. The feeling of connection was largely a projection, born of attraction rather than fact. Your brain, eager to justify the pull, invents common ground. This effect can be amplified by dopamine and oxytocin. Under their influence, perception tilts toward positivity, filtering out dissonant details and highlighting harmony. The beloved becomes not just themselves, but an idealized version shaped by your chemistry. You may believe you share the same humor, outlook, or goals, when in reality you are simply mirroring each other in the glow of early attraction. Philosophically, this speaks to a deeper human dilemma. How much of love is truly about the other, and how much is about the self reflected back? To fall for someone quickly is often to fall for a story, the story of who they might be, who you hope them to be, who you imagine alongside you. It is a beautiful illusion, but one that carries risk, for when the projection fades, the real person remains, and they may not match the portrait you painted. Yet projection is not entirely false. In some cases, imagined similarity paves the way for genuine intimacy. By believing you share more than you do, you lean closer, invest attention, and create opportunities for true connection to grow. Illusion becomes scaffold, allowing reality to take shape. Perhaps this is why fleeting impressions can evolve into lasting bonds. The brain's trickery gives the relationship a head start. Consider also the role of confirmation bias. Once you feel an initial spark, your brain selectively notices details that reinforce the impression. If you believe someone is kind, you will remember the smile but forget the hesitation. If you believe they understand you, you will notice agreement but overlook difference. Love at first sight thrives on this bias, amplifying fragments into conviction. Pause and reflect. Think of a time when you were sure someone was perfect for you after only a brief encounter. Was it their qualities, or was it the qualities you needed them to have? The illusion of affinity blurs the line between perception and imagination, reminding us that attraction is as much about longing as it is about reality. But illusions are not always gentle. Sometimes the projections of early love set the stage for disappointment, even heartbreak. The same chemistry that convinces you of closeness may later reveal how little was shared in truth. And yet we return to the experience again and again, as if the hope itself is worth the risk. Still, illusions are only part of the story. Beneath them lies another force shaping rapid attachment, one not born of projection, but of the earliest patterns we carry from childhood, the blueprints of attachment. And it is to these deep-rooted templates, carved in our earliest bonds, that we now turn. Picture a child reaching out for their caregiver. The look in their eyes is more than a request. It is a search for safety, for the certainty that someone will respond. In that exchange, when the arms do open or when they do not, patterns begin to form. These patterns, carved early in life, quietly shape how quickly you connect and how deeply you attach, even decades later. Psychologists call these attachment styles. First studied by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, attachment theory shows that the ways we bond in childhood carry forward into adulthood. If a caregiver was reliably present, the child learns that closeness is safe, forming what is called a secure attachment. If care was inconsistent, the child may grow anxious, clinging tightly to connection for fear of losing it. If care was distant or rejecting, the child may learn to hold back, to avoid vulnerability altogether. These blueprints matter in love at first sight. Studies reveal that people with anxious attachment are especially prone to intense, rapid infatuations. Their nervous systems are primed to seize on any sign of closeness, amplifying it into significance. A glance, a smile, a kind word. These become proof that someone may feel the need for certainty and connection. The rush feels irresistible because it echoes the urgency of childhood longing. In contrast, those with avoidant attachment may resist the intensity of sudden attraction, holding back from the vulnerability it implies. Yet even here, the blueprint shapes response. The avoidance itself is a legacy of early bonds, influencing how love is allowed or refused to enter. Securely attached individuals, meanwhile, may feel the spark without being consumed, able to let attraction grow steadily, rather than grasping at its first flame. Neuroscience supports this. Brain imaging shows that attachment styles correlate with differences in activity in the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, the regions balancing emotional reactivity and regulation. Anxiously attached individuals show heightened amygdala responses to signs of rejection, making them hyper-alert to closeness and distance. This sensitivity fuels the intensity of early attraction. When attention is received, it feels magnified, almost fated. Philosophically, this raises a haunting thought. When we fall in love quickly, are we truly meeting the other, or are we meeting the echoes of our earliest bonds? Perhaps each new face carries with it the shadow of those first arms that held or did not hold us. In this sense, love at first sight is not just about the present moment, but about the entire history of longing etched into the nervous system. Experiments highlight this link. In one study, adults with anxious attachment styles were more likely to report love at first sight experiences and to idealize new partners quickly. They described feeling certain, after minimal contact, a certainty less about evidence and more about emotional hunger. Avoidant individuals, by contrast, reported fewer such experiences, often describing early attraction as overwhelming or intrusive. Pause and reflect. Think of the way you respond when you meet someone new. Do you lean in quickly, feeling familiarity in their presence? Do you hold back, guarding yourself against exposure? Or do you find balance, allowing closeness to grow without urgency? These patterns are not accidents. They are the quiet continuation of your first lessons in love. But the story does not end with childhood. Even as these patterns guide you, they do not define you absolutely. Attachment is a template, but it can be rewritten through experience, through trust built slowly, through bonds that prove the nervous system wrong. Quick love may be a spark lit by history, but conscious love is the fire you choose to tend. Still, before choice arrives, biology and history often join forces, creating the speed and intensity of early attachment, which brings us to another layer, not just the templates of childhood, but the biases of thought that shape how you interpret attraction. For beyond chemistry and memory, your brain carries shortcuts in judgment that tilt perception in ways both wondrous and dangerous. And so we turn next to the hidden biases, those mental filters that make love at first sight feel truer than it sometimes is. Imagine standing in front of a painting. You catch only a glimpse, yet your mind rushes to fill in the rest of the canvas. The strokes you do see convince you of the ones you don't. Attraction works in a similar way. The brain uses shortcuts or cognitive biases to complete the picture of another person before you have the facts. These shortcuts save time, but they also distort reality, making early love feel deeper or safer than it truly is. One of the most powerful is the halo effect. When you notice one appealing quality in someone, perhaps their smile, their voice, or their confidence, your brain unconsciously assumes they possess other positive traits as well. A kind laugh becomes evidence of kindness overall. Physical beauty becomes proof of intelligence or moral goodness. Experiments have confirmed this bias repeatedly. Participants consistently rated attractive individuals as more competent, trustworthy, and likable, even without supporting evidence. In love at first sight, the halo effect can make a stranger feel like an ideal partner before a single conversation has begun. Another bias at work is confirmation bias. Once your mind decides that someone is special, you selectively notice details that reinforce this impression. A glance you interpret as affection outweighs the moments of distance. A shared opinion feels profound, while differences fade from memory. In experiments, people primed to expect compatibility with a stranger reported higher attraction, regardless of the actual interaction. Belief shaped perception, and perception shaped desire. Then there is the scarcity effect. Psychologists have shown that people value what seems rare or limited more intensely. When you meet someone who feels one of a kind, your brain inflates their worth as if the rarity itself proves significance. In the fast burn of attraction, scarcity fuels urgency. If I don't act now, I might lose this chance forever. These biases are not errors in the strict sense. They are survival strategies. Evolution favored quick decisions in uncertain environments. Better to leap toward connection, even with incomplete information, than to miss an opportunity. But what once kept ancestors alive can, in modern love, create illusions that bind too quickly, blurring judgment with desire. Philosophically, this raises an unsettling question. If biases shape our first impressions, how much of love is true recognition, and how much is self-deception? Perhaps both. To be human is to live through filters, never seeing another directly, but always through the prism of expectation and memory. Love at first sight is therefore not only about the beloved, but about the mind's need to complete patterns, to turn fragments into stories. Pause here. Recall a time you felt instantly certain of someone's goodness or compatibility. How much of that certainty was them, and how much was your own halo, your own scarcity effect, your own confirmation bias, painting them in golden light. That golden glow is seductive, but it is also fragile. Experiments on speed dating provide striking evidence. Researchers found that participants often made lasting judgments about potential partners within the first 3 minutes of conversation. Yet when compared to later assessments, after more extended interaction, those first impressions often proved inaccurate. Still, the participants clung to them. The quick judgment felt more convincing than the fuller picture. The shortcut had the weight of truth. And this is where danger enters. Biases that once protected us can also betray us. They can make us overlook red flags, mistake chemistry for compatibility, or project depth where there is only surface. In the rush of attraction, the brain convinces you not only that love is possible, but that it is inevitable. But what happens when the illusions fail, when the chemistry fades, when the biases dissolve, when the person before you no longer matches the image your brain created? This brings us to the shadow side of fast love, the ways in which speed can deceive, leading to heartbreak or regret. And so we turn now to the risks of falling too quickly, the moments when the very mechanisms that spark love become the traps that undo it. Picture a fire catching in dry grass. It blazes quickly, sending sparks into the night, illuminating everything around it with sudden brightness. But as fast as it begins, it risks burning out, leaving behind only ash. Love that arrives too quickly can feel the same, brilliant in its ignition, yet vulnerable to collapse once the illusions fade. Science helps explain why. The very systems that spark rapid love, the dopamine circuits craving novelty, the oxytocin that fuels bonding, the cognitive shortcuts that smooth over uncertainty, are not designed for long-term accuracy. They prioritize speed and intensity. In evolutionary terms, quick attachment increased the chances of reproduction and survival. But in modern life, where relationships extend far beyond reproduction into decades of shared decisions and values, these rapid systems can mislead. Consider dopamine first. Its surges make the new feel extraordinary, magnifying details into significance. But dopamine's nature is to fade as novelty diminishes. In experiments on reward learning, brain scans show that dopamine spikes strongly at the beginning of new experiences, but decreases as familiarity grows. This means that the electric rush of early love is by design unsustainable. What felt like destiny in the first encounter may dull into ordinary once the brain no longer treats the beloved as new. Oxytocin, too, carries its risks. Its release during early intimacy creates trust and bonding, but trust is not always wise. In controlled experiments, participants given oxytocin were more likely to forgive betrayal or overlook negative behaviors in others. In real life, this can mean attaching too deeply to someone who does not truly deserve devotion, mistaking chemistry for safety. The very hormone that fosters closeness can also cloud judgment. Cognitive biases add another layer. The halo effect, confirmation bias, and scarcity effect all sharpen attraction, but they can also make flaws invisible. A partner's troubling behavior may be excused, their inconsistencies rationalized, because the brain prefers a coherent story to a contradictory one. Early infatuation often feels like clarity, when in fact it is selective blindness. Philosophically, this reveals a paradox. The very mechanisms that make love possible also make us vulnerable to deception by others, but more often by ourselves. When we fall too quickly, we are not only meeting another person, but also confronting the architecture of our own longing. We may be in love not with who they are, but with who we need them to be. Experiments highlight the consequences. Studies of love at first sight often find that while it predicts intense attraction, it does not reliably predict long-term relationship satisfaction. Initial sparks can lead to strong beginnings, but without deeper compatibility, the flame burns out. In contrast, relationships that begin more slowly sometimes report greater stability, built on knowledge that grows rather than illusion that fades. Yet, despite the risks, the allure of quick love endures. Why? Perhaps because the intensity itself feels worth the danger. To experience that blaze, even briefly, is to feel fully alive. Humans are drawn not only to safety, but to transcendence, to moments that feel larger than life. Rapid love provides this, a sense of stepping out of the ordinary into something rare and luminous. Pause and reflect. Have you ever been swept into something that later dissolved, leaving you both exhilarated and wounded? Did you regret it, or did you treasure the memory despite the pain? Often we value even fleeting love because it reminds us of our capacity to feel, to leap, to risk. The cost of speed is sometimes heartbreak, but the reward is intensity, a glimpse of what it means to burn brightly, if only for a moment. Still, wisdom lies in recognizing the pattern. To understand that quick love is fueled by systems that favor speed over depth is not to dismiss it, but to temper it. Awareness allows you to savor the spark without confusing it for permanence. The fire may ignite swiftly, but whether it lasts depends on how you feed it, whether novelty evolves into familiarity, whether chemistry transforms into compatibility. Philosophically, one might say that fast love is a teacher. It reveals how hungry we are for connection, how ready we are to believe in destiny. It exposes the illusions of our minds and the vulnerabilities of our hearts. To fall quickly is to confront both our biology and our longing. It is a reminder that love is never only rational, nor only chemical, but always a dance between the two. But this leads us to the next step in the arc. If quick love risks deception, how can the initial spark transform into something conscious and enduring? What practices or shifts allow the leap of first sight to evolve into the steadiness of lasting choice? To answer this, we must move from the fleeting chemistry of beginnings to the deliberate decisions of sustained love, the shift from instinct to intention, from falling to staying. Imagine a flame dancing in the dark. At first it leaps wildly, consuming whatever fuel it finds, unpredictable and dazzling. But if you wish for it to last, you must tend it, shield it from the wind, feed it carefully, and allow it to settle into a steady glow. Love follows the same arc. The spark of first sight is wild, unbidden, sometimes overwhelming. The question is whether that spark transforms into a lasting fire, or fades once the initial fuel is gone. Science shows us that different systems govern these phases. The early rush of attraction, the dopamine surge, the novelty, the illusions, belongs to what neuroscientists call the lust and attraction phases. But for long-term bonds, another system takes over, attachment. This shift involves not only oxytocin and vasopressin, but also the recruitment of brain regions linked to decision-making and planning, particularly the prefrontal cortex. In other words, lasting love requires more than passion. It requires choice. One striking experiment compared brain scans of people newly in love with those in relationships lasting over 20 years. Both groups showed activity in reward pathways when viewing their partner's face, but the long-term couples also displayed increased activation in areas linked to calmness, trust, and suppression of negative judgment. Passion had not vanished, it had been integrated into a broader, steadier system. The brain had learned to sustain fire by turning sparks into embers. Philosophically, this shift is profound. Falling in love is passive. You stumble, you are swept, you are carried. Staying in love is active, a series of daily decisions to nurture, forgive, attend, and remain. The first is chemistry, the second is character, yet both are needed. Without the spark, love feels hollow. Without the choice, it cannot endure. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. The glance across a room may feel like destiny, but what follows, the conversations, the small acts of care, the willingness to see flaws, determines whether the story continues. Psychology research confirms this. Couples who frame their relationship as a conscious commitment, rather than simply a fortunate spark, are more resilient during conflict. The brain's initial shortcuts may light the way, but the prefrontal cortex provides the map. Pause here. Reflect on your own experiences. Have you felt the difference between being swept into attraction and choosing to remain in it? The first feels like a current pulling you downstream. The second feels like planting your feet, deciding where to build a home. Both are love, but they exist at different depths of the mind. Still, the line between spark and choice is not a sharp divide. The two phases overlap, influence, and feed each other. A spark can inspire the decision to stay. A decision to stay can renew the spark. In this way, passion and choice form a loop, each sustaining the other. Neuroscience mirrors this. Novelty rekindles dopamine, while stability strengthens oxytocin's bond. Love thrives when both systems are fed. But here lies a challenge. Our culture often glorifies the spark while neglecting the choice. Stories of love at first sight abound, while fewer tales celebrate the quiet work of tending. Yet, it is the tending that carries love beyond biology into the realm of meaning. To move from spark to choice is to move from accident to art. And so the question becomes, if love can shift from chemistry to commitment, what does that reveal about the nature of destiny? Are we fated to fall, or do we create the fate ourselves through decisions? This opens the next layer of reflection, the interplay of chance and will in the story of love. Imagine walking through a crowded street and locking eyes with someone for just a second. It feels like chance, an accident of timing, a random crossing of paths. Yet later you might wonder, was that fate? Love often begins in this tension between accident and meaning, between biology pulling us and choice guiding us. The paradox of destiny in love is that it feels both inevitable and fragile, as though something larger than you is at work, yet it also depends entirely on what you do next. Science explains the sense of inevitability. The brain is a storyteller. When dopamine surges and oxytocin bonds, your mind weaves a narrative that justifies the feeling. We were meant to meet. It had to be this way. Psychologists call this the narrative bias, our tendency to interpret random events as parts of a coherent story. Falling in love quickly activates this bias. Because the emotions are so strong, they demand explanation. Fate becomes the simplest answer. Experiments confirm how powerful this narrative can be. In one study, couples who reported believing their relationship was destined showed higher satisfaction during early stages, but not necessarily greater stability long term. The feeling of fate amplified passion, but did not guarantee endurance. The biology provided a spark, but without conscious choice, the flame still risked fading. Yet destiny is not mere illusion. Philosophically, it points to the way humans assign meaning to randomness. To believe in fate is to acknowledge that love is larger than rationality, that it carries a weight of mystery beyond measurable cause. And this belief itself can shape reality. Couples who treat their meeting as special, as though written in the stars, often invest more deeply in protecting their bond. Fate becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, turning chance into permanence. Still, destiny alone cannot sustain. Neuroscience reminds us that attachment requires active reinforcement, small acts of care, intentional time, renewal of commitment. Fate may open the door, but choice decides whether you walk through. In brain terms, the transition from attraction to attachment requires the prefrontal cortex, the seat of judgment and planning. This is the biology of choice, counterbalancing the chemistry of chance. Pause and reflect. Think of someone who entered your life by what seemed like coincidence. Did you later tell yourself it was fate? Was that belief a comfort, a way of explaining the unexplainable? Perhaps it doesn't matter whether it was destiny or accident. What matters is how you shaped the encounter afterward, what choices you made to honor or to leave it. Experiments on long-term couples shed light here. Partners who framed their relationship as meant to be often leaned on this narrative during difficult times, using it as motivation to persist. Those who framed it purely as chance sometimes lacked that anchor, but in the end, the difference lay not in how they began, but in how they continued. What actions and decisions kept the bond alive beyond its origin story. Philosophically, one might say love is both fate and choice. Fate is the spark that feels beyond you. Choice is the tending that lies within you. Together they form a paradox that makes love both mysterious and real, both gift and responsibility. Perhaps this is why love feels sacred. It belongs partly to forces you cannot control, and partly to the daily labor of your own hands. And yet, even as destiny and choice intertwine, another factor remains: time. For if falling fast reveals the power of sparks, only the unfolding of time reveals whether those sparks are durable. To understand why love sometimes burns brightly but briefly, and other times deepens into endurance, we must turn to the rhythms of time itself in the architecture of love. Picture a seed sprouting in fresh soil. At first, the growth is rapid, fragile stems racing upward toward the light. But only with time do the roots deepen, strengthening enough to hold against wind and weather. Love follows this rhythm. What begins quickly, like a tender shoot, must endure seasons of growth before it becomes something rooted and resilient. Science offers evidence for this unfolding. The brain's chemistry of attraction is, by design, temporary. Dopamine surges in the novelty phase, magnifying pleasure and anticipation. But longitudinal studies show that these surges diminish within 1 to 2 years of a relationship. What replaces them is not a fading of love, but a transformation: increased oxytocin, vasopressin, and endorphins, shifting the experience from fiery passion to calm attachment. Early love is like a spark in dry grass. Enduring love is like a slow-burning hearth. One study by Bianca Acevedo and Arthur Aaron used brain scans to compare new lovers with long-term couples, still reporting deep affection. Both groups showed activation in dopamine-rich reward centers when viewing their partner's face, but in long-term couples, activity also appeared in regions associated with calm, pain relief, and reduced anxiety. In other words, time reshapes love from an urgent high to a steady sanctuary. Philosophically, this raises an important reflection: is enduring love less passionate, or simply passionate in another way? Our culture often glorifies beginnings, the spark, the first glance, the immediate click. Yet perhaps the truest wonder lies in endurance, in the way love adapts and deepens, not despite time, but because of it. To stay is not to resist change, but to allow love itself to change form. Experiments in relationship psychology confirm this transition. Couples who describe their bond in terms of growth, acknowledging shifts, phases, and transformation, report higher satisfaction over decades than those who cling to the idea of unchanging passion. Flexibility, not permanence, appears to be the true foundation of lasting intimacy. Love at first sight may be an opening chapter, but endurance requires rewriting the story again and again. Pause for a moment. Think of someone who has remained in your life through changing seasons. The spark you first felt may have dimmed or shifted, yet their presence carries a deeper weight, an anchoring calm. That evolution is not a failure of passion, it is its maturation. What was once urgency becomes steadiness. What was once novelty becomes familiarity rich with shared memory. But time also exposes illusions. Quick love that was built on projection or bias may wither when confronted with reality. Early sparks can reveal potential, but only through shared years do you discover whether compatibility runs deeper than chemistry. This is why the test of time is not just survival, it is revelation. It shows what remains when dopamine fades and illusions dissolve. Philosophically, love's endurance reflects the paradox of human existence itself. We crave both novelty and stability, both the rush of the unknown and the comfort of the familiar. Time forces us to navigate this paradox, teaching us that real love is not about choosing one over the other, but about weaving them together. The spark rekindled through new experiences, the hearth sustained by daily devotion. And so the test of time reveals love's dual truth. Quick beginnings can be dazzling, but only time gives love its full weight, its proof of resilience. Falling fast may be a gift, but staying long is an art. This leads us to the final steps of the arc, where we integrate everything, the sparks, the illusions, the risks, and the endurance, into a reflection on how fleeting infatuation can evolve into conscious, chosen love. Imagine the first time you met someone who later became important in your life. In those early moments, they shimmered with possibility, as though outlined by light. Every word felt significant, every gesture amplified by your attention. But with time, the glow softened. You began to see them not as the dream your mind projected, but as the complex, imperfect human they are. This shift from illusion to clarity is one of the most pivotal transitions in love. Science explains why illusions dominate early attraction. In the beginning, the brain is flooded with dopamine, heightening novelty, and oxytocin, amplifying trust. These chemicals bias perception toward harmony, encouraging you to overlook contradictions. Cognitive shortcuts, such as the halo effect and confirmation bias, reinforce this glow. Experiments show that people in new relationships consistently rate their partners more positively than outside observers do, highlighting how chemistry shapes perception. But as months and years pass, the intensity of these chemicals stabilizes. The brain no longer sustains the illusion with such fervor. The prefrontal cortex, the region linked to reasoning and judgment, reclaims influence, balancing passion with evaluation. It is in this phase that the real work of love begins. The beloved ceases to be a mirror of your longings and becomes, instead, a full person with strengths and flaws, gifts and shadows. Philosophically, this moment is profound. To move from illusion to clarity is to choose love consciously, not because your brain is intoxicated, but because your heart sees truth and stays anyway. In a sense, this is the most romantic stage, not the blindness of infatuation, but the sight of devotion. You are no longer in love with the projection, but with the person who stands before you. Experiments with long-term couples support this shift. In one study, partners who openly acknowledged each other's flaws while still expressing affection reported higher satisfaction than those who clung to idealized images. Love deepens not by denying imperfection, but by embracing it as part of intimacy. Seeing clearly is not the end of romance, it is its beginning in a truer form. Pause here, think of someone you once idealized. Did your feelings change when their humanity became more visible? Perhaps the projection faded, but perhaps something richer took its place. Respect, tenderness, a recognition that real love includes both light and shadow. Illusions are fragile, clarity is durable. Still, the transition can be painful. Many relationships end here, when the reality does not match the fantasy. The beloved may disappoint, or the self may realize it was in love with a dream more than a person. This is the risk of falling quickly. When illusions dissolve, the gap between projection and reality may be too wide to cross. Yet when the gap is bridgeable, the reward is profound. Choosing to remain in love with the real person transforms the relationship into something stable, resilient, and deeply human. The illusions fade, but what remains is authenticity. Love no longer driven only by chemistry, but grounded in truth. Philosophically, one might say that early love answers the question, "What do I desire?" But lasting love answers, "What am I willing to embrace?" The spark shows you what is possible. Clarity shows you what is real. And so, love's arc comes full circle. We begin with the rapid spark, chemistry and projection, and we arrive at the slow seeing of truth. The question then becomes, once you see clearly, how do you nurture love consciously, not as a fleeting accident, but as an intentional choice? This brings us to the next chapter, the integration of all these forces into a deliberate practice of sustaining love beyond its illusions. Picture two people sitting together in silence. The rush of early infatuation has passed, and there are no fireworks, no dizzying dopamine surges. Yet there is a calmness in the air, a sense of safety, of being seen and accepted. This is the quiet landscape of conscious love, a phase where the bond is no longer carried only by biology, but by deliberate choice, daily practice, and shared meaning. Science shows that conscious love recruits parts of the brain not as active during infatuation. While the caudate nucleus and ventral tegmental area blaze during the spark of attraction, long-term couples show heightened activation in the prefrontal cortex, responsible for judgment, planning, and empathy. Love matures from an instinct into a decision, one that requires effort, memory, and imagination. Experiments on relationship longevity confirm this shift. Couples who engage in intentional rituals, whether shared meals, weekly check-ins, or simply expressing gratitude, report higher satisfaction and resilience. These practices stimulate oxytocin release, reinforcing bonds, but they also serve as conscious signals to the brain. This bond matters. It is chosen. Philosophically, conscious love reflects the transition from accident to art. Falling in love can happen to you, like weather sweeping across your life. But staying in love requires agency, an act of tending, like a gardener nurturing soil long after the bloom of spring. The gardener cannot rely on the first rain. They must return again and again, cultivating what is fragile into something enduring. Consider forgiveness. Early passion may ignore flaws, but long-term love demands the ability to face them. Experiments on couples show that those who practice forgiveness not only experience greater relationship satisfaction, but also show physiological benefits, such as reduced blood pressure and lower stress hormone levels. To forgive is both a psychological act and a biological medicine, weaving resilience into the fabric of love. Pause and reflect. Think of someone who has remained with you, not only during moments of passion, but through difficulty. What sustains that bond? Perhaps it is patience, perhaps trust, perhaps the willingness to show up even when feelings waver. That consistency is the essence of conscious love. Yet conscious love is not the absence of passion. In fact, deliberate novelty, trying new activities, traveling, learning together, can reignite dopamine surges, blending the excitement of beginnings with the steadiness of years. Studies have shown that couples who introduce new experiences into their relationship report higher levels of satisfaction as the brain interprets novelty as reward, linking it to the partner. In this way, biology and choice can work hand in hand. Philosophically, conscious love challenges the cultural myth that passion must always be spontaneous, effortless, or fated. It reminds us that the deepest bonds are not accidents, but practices. They are cultivated through rituals, sustained through forgiveness, and renewed through shared growth. In conscious love, the mystery of attraction remains, but it is balanced by the clarity of commitment, and so the story arcs toward its conclusion. We began with sparks, illusions, and the rush of falling fast. Now we arrive at the realization that love, to endure, must be both chemistry and choice, both biology and philosophy. The final step is integration, to honor the hidden science of love, while also acknowledging its human artistry. This prepares us for the closing reflection, how to carry the awareness of love's rapid beginnings into a mindful embrace of its deeper journey, from the fleeting strike of lightning to the steady glow of an intentional flame. Imagine lightning striking in the distance. For an instant, the sky is alive, bright, electric, overwhelming. That is the spark of rapid love, the sudden recognition, the chemistry that ignites before thought has time to intervene. Now picture a hearth fire, steady and glowing, warming a room, not with shock, but with constancy. That is what love becomes when spark and choice are integrated, when biology and intention weave into one continuous flame. The hidden science of why we fall in love so fast has revealed itself throughout this journey. Dopamine makes novelty irresistible. Oxytocin and vasopressin create bonds that feel immediate. Mirror neurons echo another's emotions, and cognitive biases paint strangers in golden light. Childhood attachment patterns push us toward rapid intimacy, while illusions and projections fill gaps in our perception. These forces, silent and unconscious, explain why a glance, a touch, or a voice can feel like destiny. Yet science alone cannot contain the story. For love is not only biology, but meaning. It is the human tendency to take chemical surges and shape them into narratives, to call coincidence fate, to interpret projections as affinity. Love at first sight is a biological possibility, but it is also a philosophical act, a leap of imagination that says, this matters, this person matters, this moment matters. Experiments confirm both sides of the arc. Rapid attraction is measurable, its speed undeniable. Yet long-term studies reveal that enduring love depends not on the swiftness of the spark, but on the cultivation that follows. Passion fades unless renewed. Trust dissolves unless tended. Illusions fracture unless replaced with clarity. Love becomes sustainable not by resisting its biological roots, but by embracing them and guiding them with conscious choice. Philosophically, integration is the heart of love's mystery. To recognize that you are drawn by forces beyond your control, chemistry, memory, instinct, and yet to also choose daily to nurture what those forces begin. In this sense, love is neither fate nor free will alone, but a dance between them. The spark is given, the flame is chosen. Pause and reflect. Think of love not as a single moment, but as an unfolding arc. The rapid spark is part of its beauty, but so is the long tending, the conscious staying, the acceptance of flaws, the renewal of passion through effort. Both phases are true, both are needed. Integration means holding both truths without contradiction, that falling fast is real, and that only by slowing down can it endure. It means honoring the chemistry without being enslaved by it, savoring the illusions without mistaking them for permanence, and finding freedom not in rejecting biology, but in building meaning upon it. And so the journey comes full circle, from the sudden electricity of a glance to the deliberate warmth of a life shared. Love is revealed not as a mystery solved, but as a mystery inhabited, half science, half art, both fleeting and eternal.